What's up? Welcome in early out on the West Coast here on this football Black Friday. If you're out shopping, if you got roped into being out shopping, hey, here we are to the rescue for you. Plenty of stuff to talk about from yesterday's action. And man, do we have a slate on tap for us today. It is rivalry weekend, and it gets started here in just about an hour. Consider this your countdown to kick off your first ever Black Friday edition of the program. Alongside, as always, Vegas Mac. Vegas Mac, what's going on, my brother?
Much. Oh, what a great day yesterday. Lots of food, lots of football. And as a second, I guess, dish, we get all of this great football today. And I can't wait. A lot of things going on, and not just football, but just a lot of things going on right now in sports.
Yeah, we've had so many. As I sit here, as we get ready to go through today's program and everything, I've got the battle for Atlantis on for Virginia Tech at 6-1 against VCU. There is nothing like ballroom basketball at this time of year. And then there's, you could just absolutely disgrace one of the greatest MTEs in college basketball, the Maui Invitational, with the Players Invitational or the Players Era Invitational or the Players Era in front of nobody that we pulled off in Vegas last week. But if you're a sports fan, you've had plenty of stuff to watch. You've got plenty more to watch this weekend. We had 3 games yesterday. And, for all you conspiracy theorists out there, the call was definitely made from Vegas that, like, hey, let's have all the underdogs let's just have them outright win. And we sit here, Mac, with a couple days left in the month of November, and there might only be a couple weeks left in the respective seasons of a couple of teams that we saw yesterday. So let's cycle back to yesterday just a little bit before we talk about Thanksgiving and the rest of what's going on today. It started early in the morning. Jordan Love. There's something about Jordan Love and Thanksgiving Day against in Detroit where he just turns into the second coming of Brett Favre, Joe Montana, and Dan Marino all rolled into one player as the Packers sweep the Lions for the first time in a long time and do some serious damage to Detroit's playoff hopes with a 31-24 victory yesterday. Just a goofy game, not a solid game top to at not Green Bay. Detroit is definitely missing their 2 coordinators from last year, and maybe that's something that leads into the offseason. This is a team that's banged up on the O-line. They just had to drag Frank Ragnow off the couch out of retirement. Their D-line's got some issues. Detroit's kind of up against it here down the stretch, Mac.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you're right. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the year. Would the loss of their coordinators make a difference? And I think for the most part, we haven't really seen it. But now, we have their head coach is now calling their plays on offense, which is kind of taking away from his overall ability just to kind of survey and make those big decisions. It's very interesting to me. We kind of had a little side conversation yesterday about some of this stuff, and for me, I think football is in a weird spot with all of these going for it on fourth downs. The Lions yesterday twice I could have kicked field goals. And put points on the board. We've seen teams taking points off the board. I know it's something that you're kind of leading the charge on, but it's the loss of Amon St. Brown did not help yesterday either for the Lions. But yeah, they are definitely in trouble. It's we may have seen the season turn for both the Lions and the Chiefs yesterday.
Yeah, and when you look at it from a Detroit standpoint, if you glance forward at their schedule here, they've got the game against Cowboys on Thursday Night Football coming up. Then they're at the Rams. Then they host the Steelers. Then they're at the Vikings on Christmas Day, and then they finish the season with the Bears. And they're in the situation within the North here when you look at it, and not only that, but you have kind of a goofy schedule for Detroit going forward here. You've got the game next Thursday, then they got 10 days before the game at Los Angeles against the Rams. Then your customary 7-day week before Chris. Some teams here have this in their schedule. We talked about it on our show on Wednesday night about the Cowboys, and they always get the Thanksgiving, and then it's always followed up by a Thursday game the following week here. So when you look at that for them and you look at their positioning, and something that I want everybody to pay attention to when it comes down to the NFC playoff picture specifically here, is lying in the weeds is the 49ers at that 7 spot, the team that Detroit is chasing. But the key number here that everybody needs to pay attention to is San Francisco 8-2 in the conference. The next team down past the Lions would be the Cowboys, who are 3-4-1 in the conference. And then you have the Panthers, who are 4-3 in the conference, but the Panthers have lost head up to the 49ers here. So that conference record for the Niners, with only the conference games left with Seattle, who they've already beaten in Seattle, and then that Sunday against Chicago here, the 49ers have put themselves in a really good position. And Detroit is kind of up against it here, because if it comes down to that tie spot with Detroit and San Francisco, Detroit's 2 games behind San Francisco as far as the conference goes. If any team can rally, it's a Dan Campbell coached team. But now under Dan Campbell, the Lions are 1-4 on Thanksgiving under Dan Campbell. Kind of an interesting stat that came out of yesterday. And I don't know where to start with them. I think you hit it pretty solid on the head there. The loss of Amon-Ra St. Brown. We know they're already out without Sam Laporta. Obviously, we've seen an emergence of Jameson Williams being inserted back into the offense, but they've just looked kind of disjointed all year, and I don't think we thought the coordinator thing was going to be a big deal, and now it's starting at the worst possible time to look like it is a bigger deal than we thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, it really, I mean, it is a big thing. Good teams can sometimes overcome that, and I think we saw that at the beginning of the year, where the Lions kind of overcame it for a little while. They kind of had a really nice stretch, but now it's like we said, we've passed Thanksgiving. We know what these teams are. These teams really aren't going to change their stripes too much. You're not all of a sudden going to change things at this point of the season. You can't change things at this point of the season, so you got to make do with what you got. And yeah, there are a lot of questions. I mean, here's the other thing. I mean, we talked about from the offensive standpoint. I didn't think this team looked very good from a defensive standpoint. Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, I forgot that he even was playing yesterday. I mean, he was. I mean, I really thought almost a non-factor in that game. He really didn't do all that much, and so I look at it from that standpoint as well. I don't think the Lions' defense is as good, as scary, as strong as it was last year.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. So obviously the eyes of both the Packers and the Lions on today's game at the Lincoln, Philadelphia, between Chicago and Philadelphia, 2 8-3 teams doing battle there. And I think that's going to be an interesting one, and we'll get to that before we get out of here, before the kickoffs coming up here at 10 o'clock. Chiefs and Cowboys was another fun one yesterday. And the Cowboys, and T kind of alluded to this on Wednesday's show. I mean, they're playing solid football right now. And of course, the center of all the attention after the game was over was Jerry Jones, who decided to go through his media scrum with a giant turkey leg as his microphone and made all the attention about him. You pull away from that, Dak Prescott, 27-39, 320 yards and 2 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb had a huge game. And this Chiefs team, also now up against it here as we go down the stretch. And they're pretty much, I think, and obviously there's a lot of different things that can happen, but the Chiefs are pretty much in a we got to win out kind of scenario here, which will be interesting to see how it plays itself out. But you want to talk about the Lions being up against it. I think the Chiefs are definitely way more up against it than the Lions are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised, but not surprised. I mean, I think we kind of seen this coming. I mean, the Chiefs have played a lot of football over the last 3 or 4 years. I think it's kind of caught up to them. And the injuries that they had at the beginning of the year, they never really seem. I mean, even though Mahomes is offensively has done pretty well, they're just they're not they're not winning the games that they normally win. Those little things that drive T crazy about how they always seem to, the last second drives or the little things that kind of made them special. It's not there this year. And and we know the one thing we know about the NFL is the NFL. I think more than any other league adjusts so well, and sometimes it takes a little while. And I think you start to see. I think I see it with the Lions, and in fact, all three of these teams I'm talking about, the Chiefs, and definitely with the Ravens. I think the NFL has adjusted to what these teams do, and now it's all about making that next step. It's like, okay, how can we readjust now that everybody's kind of figured out, what we're doing? And I think that's part of what we're seeing in a lot of the games this year. I think teams have figured a couple of things out about some of these teams, and they're not as intimidated by them as much anymore.
Yeah, and again, you pull the camera out and you look forward when it comes to the Chiefs, and they sit now in a position where at 6-6, their next game is against the Texans on the 7th on Sunday Night Football on Peacock. Obviously, a massive game for both the Chiefs and the Texans, but the Chiefs already have the loss in pocket to the Bills. After the Texans, they have the Chargers. They're at Tennessee. Then they play the Broncos, and they finish it up with a cupcake toss with the Raiders there at the end of the season. And, it's kind of funny, and I can't remember who brought this up yesterday, but when you look at the AFC side of things, Mac, you've got people that don't trust the Patriots, don't trust the Broncos, don't trust the Colts, don't trust the Steelers, and then you've got Kansas City and Baltimore and Houston. I'll group them in this mix. Those three teams on the outside looking in. So that game with Kansas City and Houston, absolutely massive just to stay on the first spot outside looking in here. And I think you're right. I mean, the adjustments that everybody's making to these teams that have dominated the scene over the last few years, and especially more so in the AFC than the NFC side of things, and it was just kind of a disjointed effort from Kansas City yesterday. And when we look at it from the Cowboys standpoint, as you take a peek at the playoff outlook for the Cowboys, they've still got a lot of work to do, but at 6-5-1, there's no feasible and possible way you can consider them done. And in speaking of the Chiefs and the Cowboys specifically, the Chiefs with the Texans, the Cowboys at the Lions, those are two massive games on next week's slate. Which team do you trust more to make that big push? Is it Detroit or is it Kansas City at this point? Because I think the general consensus is honestly neither one of them, but if you had to pick one, who would it be?
I would have to lean.
That is a tough question for this early in the morning.
I mean, I would have to lean a little bit towards Kansas City, and not because of what Kansas City can do. It's more about who they're going to be playing. I think that's more of a concern than anything else. I mean, I actually, from a team standpoint, I actually like the Lions, I think, more than I like the Chiefs from a team standpoint. But I just think that Kansas City is going to have more opportunities with the games that they have going forward than the Lions are in the games going forward. So I would lean probably a little bit more towards the Chiefs in that situation.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page or same side of the fence. I was on all different kinds of sides of the fence yesterday. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But we go into a week here where we've got key games all across the league. Another key game, Texans at Colts this week. The final game from last night. And before we get into Bengals Ravens, and that was, by score definition, clearly the worst of the three games, but the score doesn't totally tell the story there. Second half with Cincinnati outscoring Baltimore 20-7 there. But I mean, none of us are surprised. Joe Burrow comes back and he picks apart the Ravens like Joe Burrow typically tends to do.
Absolutely. And here's kind of my point that I was getting at. Well, let's give the Bengals a little bit of props. Where the Bengals are going to try to run it back just like they did last year. If you look at their schedule, they have a schedule where they could easily win every single game left on their schedule. And remember last
Mm-hmm.
year they were in this almost the same exact spot and they got eliminated in that last week. But yeah, I mean this is a different team with Burrow and without Burrow. Let's just be honest. He's that good. I mean, he makes those receivers 10 times better. I mean, we always talk about what can players do. Can certain players bring out the best in other players? Why I think we see it with Joe Burrow. He brings out the best in that receiver core. I mean, we still know they're good without him, but man, they're exponentially better with him there. But then again, my point about the Ravens, I think the league is caught up to Lamar Jackson. And I think it's a couple of things. I think we have so many quarterbacks that are Lamar Jackson like. And because we have so many more quarterbacks, I mean, go up and down the rosters, you see there's a ton of quarterbacks that can run. Yeah, they might not run as good, but they run. And here's a little. I'm going to be honest. Lamar Jackson's not a great quarterback. He's not. I mean, yeah, he throws for a lot, but he's not a great quarterback. He's a great athlete. He's a great athlete that can throw the ball, and because of his ability to move the pocket, i.e., himself, he creates a lot of opportunities. When you have a quarterback that can run, and you see it, Mahomes does it as well. He runs out of the pocket. It's hard to cover guys for that long. He ends up making big plays. That doesn't make you a great quarterback. That makes you a great athlete who can throw, but he's not a great quarterback. And you start to see that since he's tried to become, I think, a little bit more of a drop back in the pocket kind of quarterback, he's had more games like he did last night with all those turnovers. Again, not a knock against him. He's a different type of quarterback, but he's not a great quarterback. He's a great athlete who can throw the ball and make things happen. But the league is caught up with him because I think there's a lot of quarterbacks like him, and it's not as much a surprise anymore.
Yeah, and that's, to give you credit for this, because this is something that you've been talking about for the better part of the last couple of years when it comes to Lamar Jackson. And TJ's mentioned it too, with his Hall Passes segment that he does. And, Lamar's been one of those guys that, yeah, he's got the multiple MVPs, but this is still a guy that's never led his team to the Super Bowl. And ultimately, as a quarterback, that's what you're defined by. And, my biggest thing last night with the Ravens was just the general thought of their game plan and their thought process going into this game. You're playing Cincinnati, a team who typically is how do I put this nicely in this time of giving thanks and holiday joy? They've been just downright putrid on defense, especially against tight ends. And Mark Andrews only gets targeted 6 times in the entire game last night. I would have, from step one, been all over throwing the football to Mark Andrews and made the Bengals try and adjust on the fly. And outside of that, Isaiah Likely had a good game. But this is, again, another problem that we run into with the Ravens offense. Who's going to make plays for them on offense outside of guys named Jackson or Henry? And the guys that you would have expected it from, Zay Flowers. 7 targets last night, only had 2 receptions. DeAndre Hopkins has been basically meaningless to the Ravens. 2 catches for 25 yards last night on 3 targets. And Baltimore's lack of finding that secondary playmaker on their offense on a consistent basis is my biggest point of contention with them. I mean, you see Cincinnati come into the game last night without T. Higgins, and you knew... And when you play Cincinnati, especially with Burrow on the field, that Jamar Chase is the guy. 14 targets, 7 receptions, 110 yards last night. My kid was a little upset with him, my oldest, because he didn't get the touchdown he needed to finish off the bet last night. But a lot of questionable play calling from the Ravens is what I would highlight probably the most from an offensive standpoint in last night's game.
I'm going to throw something out to you that and I see if you agree with what I have to say. But I'm going to tell you, you want to know who the Ravens miss? There's one person that they miss more than anybody else. Justin Tucker. And I'm being honest. I'm being truly honest. The
Mhm.
Ravens, when they knew they crossed midfield, they basically had 3 points. And I think it changes the dynamic of what they could do offensively. And I joke all the time about the Steelers. They kick all 900 field goals and stuff like that. But there's something to be said when you get into a scoring position and you've got that 3 points. How many times yesterday in the past would the Ravens have just, you know what? We're gonna throw a screen pass. We're gonna run the ball on third down and settle for 3 points instead of getting nothing out of it. I think they missed Justin
Mhm.
Tucker. I think it's a dynamic that we don't think about, but I think it's a big deal for them.
Well, and I'll do this. I almost said in T's memory, like he's not with us anymore. But when you look at it, and T is Mr. Kicker on this show. He is kicker prop, kicker prop, kicker prop. He does it to me every week when we do the Thursday night triple option play. 32-14 was the final score last night. Evan McPherson of the Bengals accounted for 20 points as a kicker yesterday. 6 for 6 field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. Tyler Loop, the Baltimore kicker, no field goals, 2 extra points. McPherson outscored Loop by the exact amount that the Ravens lost the game by. I mean, it's telling there, and I think I think you're dialed in today for the day after sitting around watching football and eating all day. I'm impressed with you. Hats off.
Thanks, I appreciate it. But a lot of it is just watching.
You
I
know,
mean,
and when you look at today,
I was just gonna
yeah,
say a
no,
lot of it is just watching
I
these
think
teams. I mean, I
I
watch
think
them.
you're on it.
Yeah, I watch them so much. It's how the North is played. I mean that's I mean that you make the most of the
Hmm.
possessions that you have, and that's what it is, and that's how they play football in the North.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. So we'll get to the rest of the schedule today. How was your Thanksgiving before we get into the cornucopia of college football today?
It was absolutely amazing. I mean, if I had a hat, I would take it off. My wife did an amazing job with everything across the board. She tried a couple of different ways to do some things, and it came out absolutely amazing. I was only in charge of the mashed potatoes and the stuffing, and that was good. But from start to finish, hats off to my wife. If I could get, it wasn't even a 10 of 10. It was an 11 of 10. It was that good.
Yeah, I learned something yesterday. I'm on the north side of 40. Let's just leave it there. And went out and played golf in the morning, and you know did the bulk of the cooking. Fiance and I tag team it. She makes this apple gravy on Thanksgiving that is freaking ridiculously good. We got done eating, cleaning up. I'm not a big dessert guy in general, especially after I eat pounds and pounds of mashed potatoes and green bean casserole and all that fun stuff. At about 8:45 last night, I laid down in bed and I could not move to roll over to get to a comfortable spot. So I am an inactive today for any playing that any of these teams might need me to do. But we hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving yesterday, and perfect time for you today. Just sit up on the couch and everything. Herb and Rod's checking in. Roll Tide, fellas, they say. Funny, because we're going to talk about Alabama football before we get into today's college football slate, because Oregon State University has named Alabama offensive coordinator Jamarcus Shepard as their next head coach at Oregon State. The deal is a 5-year deal. Shepard, also Alabama's assistant head coach and wide receivers coach. He says, I'm honored to lead the Oregon State University football program and to join a community that cares so deeply about its student athletes. We will build a culture rooted in toughness, integrity, and relentless effort. And I'm excited to get to work with our players, staff, and supporters to write the next great chapter of Beaver football. Shepard has a lot of experience in the Pacific Northwest. I think this was not an out of nowhere hire. It makes a lot of sense. He spent time at Oregon State. He was on DeBoer's staff at Washington. That was the staff that led the Huskies to the national title game where they lost to Michigan. Obviously, replaces Trent Bray, who replaced Jonathan Smith, who's probably rethinking his decision to leave Corvallis and head to Michigan State. It's a risky move by him, but this is a guy that's also in charge of one of the top wide receiving duos in all of college football with Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams. Also has worked with guys like Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, Rondale Moore when he was at Purdue, River Craycraft. So there's plenty of guys that have been under his tutelage that have made it to the NFL level. But the problem with Oregon State is still the problem with Oregon State. Financial uncertainty with the school, roster turnover like crazy, which comes with a team in Oregon State, and that's the new reality of their situation, being outside of a major conference. We know the Pac-12 is getting a revival next year, but the reality of the situation is that's a tough job, and it's a big risk, but we've seen coaches that get their first jobs, and they have to take those big risks to get their first head job, and I wish them all the best there. I think Oregon State is a fantastic place to watch a game. It's a cool little community up in Corvallis. I've been lucky enough to be there. They just redid Reeser, the Raising Reeser project. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I'm also interested because as of right this second, and maybe Herb and Raj have some more on this that we're unsure of here, does he continue to coach Bama throughout however long the Bama season runs here? We'll be interested to see that, but we're starting to see this. Eli Drinkwitz, extension. He's going back to Mizzou. Clark Lee, he just signed a 6-year deal with Vanderbilt, and we talk about that all on a day where we are about, I'm going to call it 4 hours away from Gator fans' wet dream and Lane Kiffin headed to Gainesville. As we sit here, half hour before kickoff of the Egg Bowl, Mac, where is Lane Kiffin going?
He's not going back to Ole Miss. I mean, let's just throw that out. There's no way, because if he was, I mean, this would be the stupidest TV whatever we'd see ever. Like, well, I'm staying. No, you're not. You're going. So we know that. I feel it's LSU. I said from the start, I thought that was probably his best fit. I know you want him in Florida. I want him at UConn now, but that's not going to happen. But I think he's going to end up going to LSU. That's where I think he's going to go.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, because I do agree with the notion. And by the way, Florida fans and LSU fans, you have made Twitter, X, whatever you're calling it these days, highly enjoyable over the last 48 hours. It has been nothing but laugh-a-thon for me, seeing everybody's conspiracy theories. And this is something that I will forever be proud of about the way we do things on this program. We want to be right. We don't care about being first. And there is a hell of a lot of people that are not connected in any way, shape, or form right now, dropping, oh, no, it's a done deal. My sister's cousin's third aunt's friend of the family was at Chipotle the other day, and like Lane Kiffin posted a picture. Here's a perfect example. He posted a picture on his X account, which is highly entertaining just in general, of Thanksgiving dinner last night. And the first friggin' comment I saw on it was, "That table screams I'm about to move." And I'm like, my God, man, can't the guy just enjoy Thanksgiving with his family here? I know he brings a lot of this on himself, but some of you that think you're experts, you know the same amount as everybody in this room does. The only person that knows where they're going right now is Lane Kiffin.
And it's so funny, because I've enjoyed, watching the whole thing, and I kind of, haven't really, been part of it. But then all of a sudden, a couple of days ago, I've become part of it, and I've already started to see the tweets. Like there was one about, somebody tweeted, I'm in the know. I there's a NFL coach that really, really wants this UConn position. But I can't tell you who it is because, and I'm like, dude, don't get on there and say you've got all this information and you're not going to say who it is, Matt Patricia. But that's it's so funny. It just this whole thing is very comical. I saw yesterday. I was watching ESPN and Stephen A. I forget who was somebody he was debating about whether or not this was good for college football and whatnot. Listen, of course it's good for college football. Who cares where Lane Kiffin goes? I mean, I'm not playing college football, so from afar, I think this is great because listen, he's going to piss off everybody at Ole Miss. So whatever team he goes to the next couple of years, when Ole Miss plays LSU or Florida, that's just going to be incredibly fun to watch for numerous reasons. If he doesn't go to Florida, then he's building these great rivalries that are already great rivalries, and for the next couple of years, it's going to be fun to see what happens.
Yeah, that's exactly it, and obviously we'll transition this one very easily into. We've got three. Well, I'm going to be fair here, just for a second. We've got 5 10 a.m. kickoffs. Arizona time. That'd be 9 a.m. on the West Coast. And Herb and I joke about this all the time when I'm trying to get him on our program or he's trying to get me on their program. What time is it for you? What time is it there? Hey, put it this way. In 25 minutes, we have 5 games kicking off. There's only 3 of them that really matter, and the one that's going to have all the eyeballs in Stark Vegas as the Ole Miss Rebels take on their rival, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Again, all the attention. Ooh, let's fan the flames. Florida's athletic director, Scott Strickland, is currently in Starkville. You know why? Because that's where his family is still at from when he was the athletic director in Starkville. People, relax. But this will be an interesting one because as we go into this weekend of rivalry weekend here, Mac, anything goes. And this Mississippi State team, despite being 5-6 and 1-6 in the SEC, we have seen them several times this year come to play. And a lot of those games in a young, inexperienced team that's still going through a lot of transition, they're losing a lot of those games late. The spread is 7.5, conveniently just a half point over that touchdown mark. Over under at 62.5. Game time temperature from AccuWeather, 46 degrees in Stark Vegas today. Do you see a distracted situation here for the Rebels? Because this has been going on for over a month, and they've stayed real dialed in no matter what's been done. And if there is a coach that can handle his team with rumors of him leaving, like to the Tennessee Titans I've even seen, do you give the Bulldogs a shot in this game at all?
They got a shot because they have to play it. But from a distraction standpoint, I think what you said is on. This isn't like it's happening this week. This has been happening for the better part of a month or so. And so for Ole Miss, it's in essence part of the routine. I mean, listen, they're going to go out and they're going to play this game, and then from there, now I think after the game. And depending on what happens, then I think it could be a distraction if he ends up leaving, which he's going to leave. But I mean, I don't think today. Here's the deal. I mean, we joke about these kids getting all this money and this, that, and the other thing. But listen, the bottom line is, and all of us who have played and coached, we know one thing. Every single one of those kids on that Ole Miss team, as they're getting ready to play this game today, their focus really is on one thing: to win this game, because they know if they win this game, there's a good chance they're going to get a chance to get into the playoffs and win a national championship. And I think that's important. And I think I don't think we talk about that enough sometimes. Whether their coach is going to be there, and we talked about it, whether he probably won't, maybe that'll galvanize them even more to be focused as they go forward. So I don't think it's going to be a factor in today's game. You're right. Mississippi State's played people tough. Could this be a close game? Yeah. I don't think this is a place where Ole Miss missteps. I think Ole Miss wins this game.
Wordplay action from you.
Yeah,
Ole Miss
man.
missteps. The other 10 o'clock game, Another interesting one as Utah is in Lawrence, Kansas at Booth, Kansas Memorial Stadium. I'm sorry. To take on this Utah team or Utah's in Kansas to take on Kansas. This Utah team still has hopes to stay alive at the top of the Big 12, which they sit one game out of a potential title game scenario. We're not going to waste time here with all the tie-breaking scenarios. They are readily available on the internet, and a lot of them you need borderline master's degree to figure out. But Utah at 6-2, another 6-2 team that's playing tonight, that we'll talk about, still also holding out their hope for a Big 12 title game appearance, the ASU Sun Devils. Texas Tech, BYU, they're in the driver's seat. Utah on the road at Kansas. Kansas needs a win to be bowl eligible here, and that's the part of rivalry week that I think goes a little under the radar, is there's still these programs, and Kansas isn't your top tier program. Lance Leipold's done a really good job there, and they're just having kind of a down year. Expectations were pretty high there, the revamp of the booth and everything else, but they need a win to be bowl eligible, and that still does matter to a lot of these players. I get it. TJ's talked about it probably more than both of us combined here, and he's got a good point. Like, we know what happens in bowl season now. If you're not in the college football playoff, a lot of your players just decide not to play. They enter the transfer portal early. And God, I mean, how could we ever stop players from entering the transfer portal early? We just got to figure out there's got to be some kind of rocket science plan to figure out how to get these players to not enter the maybe we could just change the date when they're eligible to. I think you're going to get a good effort here from Kansas. They're playing at home. Tickets as low as $6. There you go. Not to steal your ticket thunder there, but you can get in for $6 if you want to sit in 34-degree weather today. I think Utah, and they were my pick at the beginning of the year, Mac, to win the Big 12, and I think you're going to get a very focused effort out of this Utah team. I think Kansas is going to play with them for a little bit, but I also do think that Utah ends up covering this 10.5-point spread.
First of all, I mean, there's part of these next couple of days that make me laugh a little bit. I didn't know Utah and Kansas were rivals. That was the first thing that I got out of that. I mean, it cracks me up. Anyway, but all jokes aside, I think for me, this is I think a tough game. Number one, Utah's got to feel lost, and what I mean by that is, even if they win this game, there's a good chance not only do they not get into their conference championship, they don't get into the playoff. So you're playing for a bowl game. And so, again, I go back to the kids. How do you motivate the kids to say, oh, listen, we have a lot to play for in this game? No, we don't. They really, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's that outside chance. But look at who has to lose. BYU has to lose. And Texas Tech is going to lose. Do we really think Texas Tech is going to lose to West Virginia? I tend to not believe that's going to happen. You know what I mean? No. Like, so there's, I mean, for me, when I look at this game, this is a prime game for me where I see Kansas has much more to play for than Utah does. And I can see this is a game where Kansas could end up stealing one from Utah.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because, the beauty of college football is this. And first of all, how can you not see the rivalries, the natural rivalries that the Big 12 has brought us, like Texas Tech at West Virginia? How about UCF and BYU? That one goes back months as a natural rivalry there. But, it's an interesting layout for the Big 12 today. You've got Utah in action today here in about 15 minutes. You've got Arizona State in action, the last game tonight against their rivals, Arizona. That is, for those of you confused, that is an actual natural rivalry, where Arizona State is actually underdogs in that game. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But Texas Tech and BYU are going to go into tomorrow already knowing their fate for the Big 12 title game, because it could be basically taken care of today with the outcomes of those particular games. that are going on today. So that's another interesting layer to this as well. Final 10 o'clock kickoff game that we'll actually pay any attention to. And I'm only going to bring this up for one reason, so just follow me here. Iowa is at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska, to take on the Huskers, 2 7-4 teams that have really just a bowl game left after this, and that's it. The reason I bring this game up, the only reason I'm going to give it any attention, game time temperature here in about 15 minutes from Lincoln is supposed to be 26 degrees. So do the Huskers and Hawkeyes play in colder temperatures than you will be golfing in here in a couple hours today? That's the only question about Iowa and Nebraska, because it really means nothing.
Yeah, it's a little bit colder there. Let me give you the officially right now. I am at 54 degrees. It's going to probably get up to 59. I'm not going to hit 60 today. So it will be colder there than it will. If it was 28, I'm not playing golf. Let's just be honest.
I would hope not. Otherwise, you and I are going to have a conversation about how many screws you got loose in that dome of yours there. Let's go to the middle of the day, Max, shall we? Georgia and Georgia Tech. This is an interesting game because while we talk about there is some clarity when it comes to the outlook for the Big 12 and who's going to that title game next weekend, the ACC picture is a lot more jumbled up here. And for Georgia Tech, a team that's, I don't know what to make out of this, and I don't know what to make about the ACC in general, because at the top of the ACC is number 18 Virginia, and then you've got Pitt right behind them, SMU all at 6-1 in the conference, 9-2, 8-3, 8-3 overall, and then Georgia Tech at 9-2 and 6-2. So Georgia Tech doesn't get the virtue of playing this game at Bobby Dodd. They have to play it at Mercedes-Benz, which will essentially turn this thing into a glorified home game for Georgia, even though Georgia Tech is literally down the street from the Benz. We need to play these rivalry games more on campus than we do in these big stadiums, especially at the end of the year. And that's coming from somebody who is a Florida fan and has experienced the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Oops, I'm not supposed to say that anymore. When Georgia and Florida play in Jacksonville, which will also be being played in Tampa and Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I believe, while the stadium of the future for your Jacksonville Jaguars is being built. Georgia in the driver's seat for a bye without having to play in the SEC title game. Georgia Tech needs this to have any chance to play in the SEC title game for Georgia. The ACC, too many same letters here. I like to give Georgia Tech a puncher's chance here, but there's been something, and you know this, because I've been so high on Georgia Tech all season long. There's been something just kind of quirky and goofy with Georgia Tech over the last couple of weeks. Georgia's 15.5-point favorites in this game. The total is 59.5. I have already played the game under the total. I'm really interested to see the crowd dynamic here, and I think Georgia Tech, if this game was at Bobby Dodd, as silly as that sounds, I would give them a way better chance in this game. Mercedes-Benz is, you joke about it all the time. With UConn, you can play in the mall, you can play at Madison Square Garden, you can play at the TD Garden. UConn's got multiple homes. Well, Georgia's the same way in football, and definitely Mercedes-Benz is one of those. Do you give the Jackets even a puncher's chance today?
We kind of know how this game's going to go, right? Georgia Tech should be up at the half about 28-7, right?
I knew you were going there too.
And then, Georgia will come running back. It'll be, 48-27 at the end, something like that. I mean, Georgia Tech's been a great story. I mean, they really have. I mean, they've changed their offensive outlook just a little bit. I mean, they've had a really, really great season. Do I think they have enough to stick with Georgia? I don't think so. And again, Georgia has a lot to play for because, I mean, they're playing for a bye in the first round of the playoffs. And I think that makes a huge, huge difference in this game. But you're right. I mean, when you're playing in a dome, it's kind of just blah. I mean, I hate that. Like you said, these games need to be on campus. They don't need to be in these big places. I mean, I don't know. That part bothers me anyway. But I think that hurt. I mean, if I'm Georgia Tech, I think that hurts your chances. I think you're 100% correct. I just don't think they have enough offensive firepower to stay with Georgia. I think Georgia will, and firepower, not necessarily from an offensive standpoint. I also think from a defensive standpoint. I mean, Georgia's pretty good from a defensive standpoint as well. I just think I don't know that Georgia Tech's going to get to the number that Georgia will get to in the end.
Yeah, no, and the last thing on this one, last year's game was ridiculous. The game 2 years ago, the year before last year, I could have said that. That would have been an easier way to say it. That game was also ridiculous. And what added to both of those games was where they were being played. So something to think about. 1:30 games, San Diego State and New Mexico. New Mexico needs to beat San Diego State to play their way into the Mountain West title game, where they would then play San Diego State likely again. Temple and North Texas at 1:30. North Texas looking to hold their position as maybe that team that crashes the party that we've been talking about all year. They're 10-1. They play Temple in Denton today. Boise State and Utah State. Boise State also trying to stake their claim in another Mountain West title game. And then we get to the night part of the schedule, Mac, where it gets a little spicy outside of the Indiana-Purdue game. Indiana's favored by 28.5 in this one. The over-under at 40 or 52.5. Temperature from West Lafayette, 26 degrees as well. I think the matter at hand here, the only thing that matters is, will Indiana beat Purdue by more than the 28.5 points?
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I mean, I think Indiana could cover the 52.5 on their own. Let's be honest.
Likely.
I think this one's ugly. Purdue's just not good. Let's just be honest. They're not a good football team. Indiana, this should 26 degrees or not. This is going to be should be another Indiana blowout.
And the biggest question that will come out of this Indiana Purdue game is, when we get back on the air on Tuesday, are we talking about then ranked number 1 Indiana, depending on what happens with Ohio State and Michigan tomorrow? I said it was getting spicy because at 5:30, Austin, Texas is the place for Texas A&M and Texas absolutely has to have this one if they have plans on playing in the postseason. I think Texas A&M is gettable in this situation. I don't think people really remember how absolutely heated this rivalry is, because we haven't seen it very frequently for a while. I think this game is going to be an absolute war tonight with those two. Texas A&M favored at DKR by 2.5. What is today? 52.5 point total day? They're trying to suck me in. They're trying to suck me in today. What do you make of this one tonight? Because I can't wait to see this.
Oh man, if you'd have asked me 2 weeks ago what I thought of this game, I would have thought the Longhorns had a pretty good chance. They're just too inconsistent for me. I think Texas A&M has, in a season where we've had, again, they're one of these teams in a season really where we've had a lot of inconsistencies. They've been as consistent as anybody. They've been Indiana, Ohio State consistent. They've been really good. I just think it's good. It sounds silly, and this is kind of how we started the season, talking about Arch Manning. I think this game is about Arch Manning. I think if Arch Manning has a really good game, I think this is a game that Texas can stay close and could probably even win. If I'll just be honest. If Arch Manning plays like he's played for most of the year, I think Texas A&M wins this game. And not to put it all on Arch Manning, but because part of it's been his offensive line. His offensive line has not been good. So let's kind of put it as a group. If the Texas offensive line and Arch Manning have a good day, they have a chance in this game against A&M. If they cannot handle the pressure that A&M puts on them, I don't see a way that A&M loses this game.
Yeah, and I'm going to put this out here before we talk about what's at stake in this game, mainly for Texas A&M, because Texas cannot play in the SEC title game, but we have 4 teams in the SEC that could still match up with each other. I think if Arch Manning comes out, despite what we've seen this year, despite the inconsistent play, I still think Arch Manning is the number 1 pick in the draft. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, because when you look at who's going to have the number 1 pick in the draft, it's brutal pickings. I think there's enough there. There's enough of a pedigree there that if he does come out, and I think what happens today has a lot to do with that, whether he chooses to return or to enter the draft next year. The scenarios in the SEC, pretty straightforward for the most part. You've got Texas A&M, Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss. They're the teams in the mix that can play in the SEC title game. Your matchups, and I'll give you these scenarios, and you tell me which one you think we get after this rivalry weekend. Alabama, Texas A&M, how we get there? Alabama beats Auburn, Texas A&M wins tonight. Alabama, Georgia, how do we get there? Alabama wins, Texas A&M loses. Georgia and Texas A&M, there's a little bit more in play here, and I think that the most likely scenario that we see is something that we don't know right now. Georgia and Texas A&M, if they were to match up in the SEC title game, would be a Texas A&M win and an Alabama loss, or a Texas A&M loss with an Alabama loss and an Ole Miss loss. Ole Miss's only way in, and their only possible outcome here would be Georgia and Ole Miss in the SEC title game. That would be a Texas A&M loss, an Alabama loss, and an Ole Miss win today. So obviously, Ole Miss can set the table for what we're going to see if they get the victory today over Mississippi State here in just a few minutes. Which one do you think we end up with? Bama, Texas A&M, Bama, Georgia, Georgia, Texas A&M, or Georgia, Ole Miss?
I would lean towards Alabama and Texas A&M. I think I would lean towards that one.
Do you give, since we're not going to talk about this game, do you give Auburn a chance against Alabama tomorrow?
I really don't. I think Alabama is. I guess I think they're just too good. I mean, Auburn just doesn't have enough. It's kind of the same thing. I love these rivalry games. You know, the rivalry is good for. I always say like a touchdown plus in a rivalry game. But here's and I saw it last year. We went down to Tucson and watched ASU play Arizona, and I said, "Oh, does Arizona have a chance?" Well, listen, Arizona State was just the much better team, and I think in a couple of I think in that case, I think of all of these games that we've talked about, I think Alabama is much better than Auburn. I think Ole Miss is much better than Mississippi State. Those to me would be two of the bigger upsets. Could I Texas beating Texas A&M? I don't see that as much of an upset as some of the other ones, because I mean Texas is still. I mean, we talked about it. I mean, at the beginning of the year, they were ranked number 1. I mean, they're still not a bad team.
No, not at all. Big Ten. I'll lay this scenario out just so people understand what's going on, because of the time of these games and the parties involved. It's kind of an interesting way the schedule just happened to work its way out. You've got Indiana and Purdue tonight, or today. You've got Ohio State and Michigan to start the day tomorrow. And then you've got Oregon and Washington in the next window after that. So your players as it goes for the Big Ten title game, Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan. It's kind of interesting because I think we're going to be safe to assume, and we've both already said it, that Indiana wins today. So what that leaves us is a potential with a Michigan win and an Oregon win. We could have an Indiana-Oregon rematch, and then there's a bunch of other scenarios there. But it's kind of interesting how those major players, Ohio State, Michigan, Indiana, and Oregon, and the way their game times are kind of spread out. Oregon's going to have a chance to kick off their game knowing who won the Ohio State-Michigan game and then going forward there. So, again, while certain things are very clear, certain things aren't. Let's finish the college before we get into the NFL game today. Arizona State tonight. That's 25 Arizona at number 20 Arizona State from Mountain America Stadium in Tempe, Arizona, where the road Wildcats are favored by 1.5. This total actually did not decide to just play like the others today. This one's at 48.5. Game time temperature in Tempe, Arizona today, a brisk 69 degrees down there by Tempe Town Lake. I think a lot of people, when they saw the spread to this game, why is Arizona favored? Well, you should be able to tell that pretty easily. We have no Sam Levitt. We have no Jordan Tyson. I've been real big in being critical on this Arizona team all year. I don't think they're as good as their record is. I don't think that they're as good away from home as they are. Now, they did surprise me a couple weeks ago with the big road win, but the people that are from this area are very familiar with this rivalry, and it is another one of the heated ones, and there's a lot on the line here, especially for more so for the Sun Devils than for the Wildcats. But in this rivalry, nobody gives a damn if you're 2-8 or 8-2. This is a fun one. If you haven't experienced Arizona and Arizona State, this is a 7:00 kickoff Arizona time, 6:00 on the West Coast on Fox tonight. What do you make? Devils and Cats in house divided Mackenzie.
Well, you always try to do these and take the emotion out of this. I can't do. I mean, I'm looking at it. I get, like you said, I can understand why Arizona's coming into this game much healthier than Arizona State. But Sims has played pretty darn well at quarterback for Arizona State. Arizona State's just put it to the Wildcats the last couple of years. Here's the thing that I know about this rivalry. Whatever you think is going to happen, the opposite happens. That's basically the way that this rivalry has gone. When teams are supposed to have won this game, they don't win this game.
Mm-hmm.
I think Arizona State wins this game.
Yeah, we've had people that think we're making fun of Kenny Dillingham when we say this. Do a little bit of legwork on your own. When we call him Del Taco Dillingham, there's a reason for that. I believe in Kenny Dillingham that much that I think he's the guy that has, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Kenny Dillingham will always beat Arizona because we know how this rivalry works. But I'm going to lean towards a Kenny Dillingham Sun Devil team before I'm going to lean towards an Arizona Wildcat team. No disrespect to Brent Brennan, maybe some disrespect to Brent Brennan. Kenny Dillingham will have these guys ready to go. He knows that there is still an opportunity for them to play in another Big 12 title game. The place is going to rock tonight. I can't wait to see that and see the environment involved. I think Arizona State takes the game. I haven't looked at it. I don't have it up in front of me. I'm hoping there might be some plus money on the Sun Devils out there because I will definitely jump on that one. Let's get to the NFL game here as the 10 a.m. games, or 9 a.m. West Coast games, noon Eastern games. I'm not going to be where in the world is Mike San Diego on your time zones for you here. Chicago. TJ's Chicago Bears can slide themselves right behind the Rams at number 2 in the NFC if they can go into Philadelphia and beat the Eagles. And we've talked about this in the joke on the show. TJ has to wear a Caleb Williams jersey in every video he does for the entirety of the Bears postseason run that Mac and I are going to purchase for him. You've got 2 8-3 teams in the NFC. Interesting game, a Friday game here. We know the Link's going to rock. We know the Bears' schedule down the stretch is tough. I'm really, really looking forward to watching this game. Because at the beginning of the year, when I said I thought the Bears were going to win the North, a couple weeks ago I said, well, that's not going to happen. How things can change in a couple of weeks here. This is a game I want to see who the Chicago Bears really are. Because the Bears' defense has been playing very well. They're getting guys back today on that defensive side of the ball against a Philadelphia team offensively that has looked absolutely inept all year. And I think I'm really going to find out who the Bears, if they are who I thought they were today. I'm really interested to see how they come out in this environment, in this spot. The first time the Bears have had a game this meaningful in a long time. Your first thoughts, Bears and Eagles, on Amazon Prime Black Friday football from Philadelphia.
Isn't this exactly how the Eagles get you. I mean, who's the
Yep.
whip? Who's the whipping boy this week? Who don't we like? Is it Hurts this week? Is it AJ Brown? Is it Barkley? Who's the? Is it Sirianni? Who is our scapegoat this week? Let's just go down the roster and pick somebody. I'll pick this week. It's Michael Carter. I don't know. This is how Philly goes. I think the more dysfunctional they seem, the better off they play. Isn't that kind of the way that it goes? I mean, we talked about it last year. I mean, we were about ready to, dig the hole and put them in the proverbial coffin and bury them, and then they went on and won the Super Bowl. So I think Philly sometimes has everybody a little bit fooled. But listen, I think more so this year, they aren't the same team, and I don't know why they're not the same team. From an offensive standpoint, they are sputtering. They can't see. Barkley's had one or two really good games. Other than that, let's be honest, he's been an average running back. He from a statistical standpoint, he's been an average running back. So yeah, so there's something about this Eagles from an offensive standpoint that they just there's a lot of question marks. But again, here we go. You turn the proverbial NFL calendar. It's now Thanksgiving. Now these last 5 weeks really are meaningful. This is when, like you said, we're going to really find out, what stripes were really being shown by these teams. Do I think Chicago has a chance in this game? Yeah, I do. They've played well enough to do it. But this just smells to me like a game Philly just goes in there and says, you know what, everybody thinks we're done, and they go in there and they just kind of put one on the Bears.
Yeah, and I think I don't think a lot of people, when we talk about the Eagles and their offensive struggles, I mean, if you would have told me going into a Week 12 matchup with the Bears and the Eagles at this point in the year that the quarterback with the better numbers was going to be Caleb Williams in this game, I don't know if I would have said you're crazy, but I wouldn't have believed you. Philadelphia is a 7-point favorite. Totals at 44.5. Should be about 42 degrees at the link when this game kicks off. But that's the reality of the situation. Caleb Williams is the better quarterback by numbers going into this game. I think you're dead on there. This is always, every time we expect the Eagles to internally combust, implode, whatever you want to say, that's when they get us. I think that's a great point. Other thing to pay attention to here, and I'm very interested to see what happens here. Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon. Those are the two guys that I mentioned, reinforcements coming for the Bears defense. They're both still listed as of right now as questionable. Johnson with the groin, Kyler Gordon with the calf. The bigger injury issue, and I think the biggest point of what's been going on with the Eagles, is Lane Johnson's absence. And Lane Johnson is still out with that foot injury. And I don't think people realize how big and how much of a catalyst, not only to Barkley, but just to the Eagles offense as a whole, that Lane Johnson being out is. That's where I think the Bears can make this a game today. I'm going to watch this number all the way up till kickoff. And if this thing, and there might be some out there already, again, I don't have it up in front of me here. If this thing goes to 7.5, I'm going to lean on the Bears side here. The 7 makes me a little nervous, but I'm interested to see what we get out of this game. It is obviously massive for both of these teams. And another interesting kind of sidebar to this game, Mac, Chicago's 4-2 on the road. Philly 4-1 at home. So I'm expecting and thinking we're going to get the best of both of these teams. I think this game, if it was in Chicago, I'd be a no-doubter on the Bears side of things today. But with betting involves risk, and I am a risk taker, and I'm going to wait to take that risk just in case it goes to 7.5. Anything else that's jumping out at you for the weekend before we get up on out of here and get to this Egg Bowl and the final game for Lane Kiffin in Rebels gear before he gets the ceremonial visor and becomes head ball coach 2.0 in Lanesville, Florida? Because we might as well just rename the damn town.
you know, in our rivalry, there's always one surprise. There's it always seems like every week there's one surprise, and I'm kind of going up and down, the list, and I'm going, okay, where is the surprise going to be this week? And I know this is going to shock you, um, but this is going to be my surprise. I think Pitt beats Miami. I got a feeling about it. I think from 2 weeks ago, just that comment when they played Notre Dame, like, we don't care about this game. We care about the ACC championship. And then what they went and did last week against Georgia Tech. I
Hmm.
I mean, everything that I read about, I mean, it doesn't set up well for Pittsburgh. This is a Miami defense that puts a lot of pressure, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on a young quarterback. Um, it doesn't feel like it should be a victory for Pittsburgh, but I just got a feeling that Pittsburgh, maybe I would just want a monkey wrench thrown in the whole thing and they beat Pitt. But I think, like I said, I always think that there's one upset. I look, South Carolina beating Clemson, everybody's beat Clemson. So that to me doesn't feel like that would be much of an upset. But as I go up and down, I was trying to pick one. I mean, I think that's a one that kind of stands out to me that I could see happening.
Yeah, I love that the over in that game. It's actually dropped down to 49.5 right now. I don't think you're going to see a lick of friggin' defense played in that game whatsoever. And I could definitely sit on that side with you there. And Miami, I hate to say this about a team that's 9-2, man, but you want to talk about a team that, I mean, they had me convinced. I should have known better. I've seen this team play plenty of times. Yeah, Florida State champs. 9-2, and they could finish the year 9-3 and have no business anywhere. I think the team, for me, in that same vein, that needs to be on their game the most. I'll catch some flack for this one. I think it's Alabama at Auburn, and I talked about that. They asked for my thoughts. Herb and Raj did on the program last Saturday when I joined them on their After Dark program, and I said, "Listen, Alabama's a better football team. I think Ty Simpson should be right at the top of the list for the Heisman, but I've also seen this rivalry play itself out, and I know how this one works. I think Bama is the team that I would put on upset alert the most for me this weekend. Um, I think if Cal didn't fire Justin Wilcox, I would probably look at Cal against SMU a little bit. But I think Bama's the team that needs to be on their game the most. So we've got plenty of stuff this weekend, as always. It is an all-MAC Friday. Mac's 5-hole will be coming up a little later, and then he's got the big game. Ohio State and Michigan. I've got Oregon, Washington, and TJ has the Alabama-Auburn game. So TJ will give his thoughts. No 5 for 500 this week. Our 5 for 500 is in a Thanksgiving hangover coma. And then on Sunday, we'll have the Sunday spread. And, of course, Mac will have Sunday night football. Vegas, Mac, what do you got for me before we get out of here on this Friday?
See this last little tidbit that just came down from ESPN from Pete Thamel?
What you got?
It says sources, which is always good. Florida has
Sources.
shifted Florida has shifted focus from Lane Kiffin in the school's coaching search, as the school has sensed through irregular communications that he's interested in other options.
As long as Florida's other option is not Jed Fish, then I'll deal with life.
I told you that's who they're going to end up getting. Remember, that was when we did our little game. He was,
And I told you, I told you what my reaction to that would be, and I will be making a large purchase at the Oregon Ducks team shop if Jed Fish is the coach of the Florida Gators next year. I can promise you that. Speaking of Lane Kiffin, Rebels, it took them all of 2 minutes to go up 7-0 on Mississippi State. Come on, Lacey.
Wouldn't it
Talk about a dude who's having a freaking year, and I'm not going to call him the best running back in college football because that is a no-doubter who the best running back in college football is. He wears a gold helmet and can drop 170 yards on only 8 carries, as you alluded to last week, in Jeremiah Love. But Kawan Lacey is having a fantastic year. So get yourself to your couch, get comfortable, have your breakfast leftovers. Mac's going to try not to break fingers due to cold out on the golf course. We've got you set all weekend. Again, Mac's 5-hole will be coming up here at the top of the next hour for wherever you're at. Enjoy some football, man. Enjoy a weekend full of football and ballroom basketball. All kinds of stuff going on. For Vegas Mac, for TJ, I'm Mike. We will talk to you in this space again on Tuesday night, 5:30 on the West Coast, 8:30 on the East Coast. Until then, happy footballing, man.